I'm going to teach you 5 tips to help you successfully keep a healthy aquarium. I will admit this video is going to cater towards freshwater aquariums, so if you have a saltwater aquarium, I'm sorry. If you guys know a video with tips towards helping saltwater aquarium owners have a healthy tank, go ahead and put that in the comments, and I'm sure you guys can help each other out. If you guys stick around to the end, I'll give you an extra tip to keep your aquarium healthy and happy. Tip number 1.
This right here is my favorite thing ever.
Now, I know live plants can be really intimidating because it's one more thing to keep alive in your tank, but I promise you, having live plants in your tank will keep the whole ecosystem a lot healthier. Now, you got to look at your fish tank as an ecosystem. You're trying to keep the whole tank alive. You're not just trying to keep the fish alive, right? What goes into an ecosystem? You got a whole cycle of things. So the fish, they produce a lot of nitrates, ammonia, they produce all this nutrients that you will have to take out via water changes. But if you have plants in there, those plants help soak up all of those nutrients and clean up the water a little bit. So if you keep plants alive in your tank, you will have less water changes, you will have a healthier tank, and I promise you, you will just have a better time with your tank. Plus, you'll love the aesthetics of it. It's gonna look great. The green is gonna look great in your tank. Just wanna say, the water quality will be so much better with plants. And the plants will grow based on how much nutrients are in the water. So if you see a spike in plant growth, there was probably some sort of spike in nutrients in the water. So they are kind of that like safeguard just in case you didn't do a water change or you were kind of just, kind of behind on maintenance. On top of that, they give you a very healthy environment for the fish. The fish are less stressed out because they have plants to kind of nibble on and to hide in, and sometimes fish will lay eggs on plants, and sometimes live bears will have, fry, and the fry will hide in the plants. It really depends, but the plants are so good for your tank. They multiply. If you have fish tanks for profit, you can sell plants because a lot of plants, like stem plants, you could grow and you can cut the stem and they'll grow into their own plant. So do a lot of propagations, give them to your friends, sell them on Facebook Marketplace, anything like that. Plants are just so beneficial to your tank. Personally, I recommend swords. I recommend pearlweed for a carpeting plant. At a lot of stores you will find like Java fern. I honestly don't recommend Java fern, but you can play around with it. It's a rhizome plant, so you don't put it into the substrate. But I recommend things like guppy grass. I recommend Java moss. Java moss is great. Keeping your tank green is always a good thing. Like even if it's a little bit of algae on some hardscape, keep that there because the fish love it. It means your tank is green, your tank can support life, and it's a really, really awesome indicator that things are going well. Actually, I'm going to give you a bonus tip right now. Bonus tip number 1. So the difference between submersed plants and immersed plants is that submersed plants are completely under the water and immersed plants are partially under the water. Immersed plants you can use to pull more nutrients out of the water because they have direct contact with the carbon dioxide out in the air. Something like floater plants or even pothos, where you can put the roots in the water and the leaves are out in the air, will pull so much more nutrients out of the water. I do recommend pothos. I love using pothos. If you put pothos into your tank, you will have a never-ending pothos factory. That thing will grow and grow and grow, and you can cut it and propagate it and make more and more pothos plants, and it will keep your water so clean and healthy. Plus, it'll add this jungle feel to your tank, having plants growing out of the top. I really, really recommend it. Go ahead and do your research on what houseplants can grow with their roots completely in water, and I promise you, you won't regret it. It will keep your water clean, it will make your tank look cool, and you will learn how to take care of houseplants in a way you never thought you could. Tip number 2, lights. We just talked about plants, and in order to keep those plants alive, you need lights. Now, one of the huge things that I preach on this channel is that you don't need expensive lights. A lot of these aquarium lights are super, super expensive. You don't need that. Honestly, a lot of the lights that I have are clip-on lamps that I got at Goodwill and a high lumen light bulb. So you could get just a really bright light bulb, or you could get a light bulb that's rated to grow plants. Don't worry about breaking the bank and buying the most expensive thing you can find because you're worried that your plants won't grow. Plants need light to grow. So you just need a bright light that will penetrate through the water, and so they can photosynthesize and they can grow. Just want to make sure, if you're going the cheaper route, make sure it is bright enough, okay? If you have a deep tank, you need a really bright light. A lot of the lights that are made for aquariums, one of the good parts about them is they are super bright and they're made to penetrate that water. So if you're going a DIY route, make sure that light is bright. One of the last things that I even think about when it comes to lighting is that it lights up your aquarium. You're able to see your aquarium. Like, you have an aquarium for a reason, right? You love looking at it, you love raising fish, and what's the point if you can't even see inside of it? So getting a good quality light that illuminates your aquarium is always just a great deal, just because, I don't know, you just enjoy the hobby so much more when you can see everything that goes on in there. Tip number 3, aeration. A lot of people don't talk about aeration, I feel like. A lot of it gets wrapped into sponge filters, but your fish needs oxygen just like we do, right? We breathe oxygen out of the air, the fish breathe oxygen out of the water. So having some sort of water agitation so oxygen can kind of go into the water somehow is great for the fish. They're like a hang-on filter where the water can cascade and waterfall onto the surface, agitating the surface and letting some oxygen in there. A lot of people love sponge filters, bringing air straight into the middle of your tank, and it's saturating that water with oxygen. It keeps your fish a lot healthier. It keeps your fish a lot more active. They're just so much happier when the water is saturated with oxygen. Plants also will help with the oxygenation of the water. One of the byproducts of photosynthesis is oxygen. So when you have plants in your tank and the water is saturated, sometimes you can see that oxygen bubbling off your plants. I recommend you guys planning your tanks just to be able to see that happen. Tip number 4, water changes.
I am under the water. Please help me.
Now, for all of us seasoned aquarium owners, water changes can be like the bane of our existence. We don't want to do them. We find ways to avoid them, but we can't truly avoid them, okay? Having a good Wallstead tank, good Planet tank, establishing that ecosystem really does help eliminate water changes, but in the end, water changes really fix many of the problems we have with fish keeping. If your fish gets sick, do a water change. If your water looks bad, do a water change. If it smells bad, do a water change. If things are dying, do a water change. Water changes honestly fix so much of the problems that we have that we just can't ignore them. We gotta embrace it as a solution. And if you think about aquatic ecosystems in the wild, there are constant water changes, right? Like, think about rivers. Fish will poop and pee, and all of that gets washed away in the river, and the fish doesn't swim around in it. But in an aquarium, the fish poop and pee and it just stays there, you know? So unless we have plants to soak up all of that, or we do a water change, then the fish will continually pollute the water and degrade the health of the entire aquarium. You've probably heard of the 1 inch of fish per 1 gallon of water rule. That is a huge reason why we have that rule, is because if we overpopulate the tank and we have too much fish, then we tend to, overfeed the fish, and the fish will poop, and you will have, too much stuff going on in that tank, and the water won't be clean. Water changes are super important because it fixes all of those issues. If you overfeed your fish, which happens a lot because you're excited to see them eat, but over time you see that the water degrades, you need to do a water change. It fixes so many problems. Oh, and by the way, make sure you have a dechlorinator. Unless you're pulling water out of a well, your tap water will have chlorine in it, and it will burn your fish. So one of the ways we can combat that is getting a dechlorinator and treating your water before you do your water changes. I know some of my friends don't like to spend money on dechlorinators, and so they will have 5-gallon buckets. The chlorine will evaporate out of the water, so you let it sit for 24 hours and then you can use that water. But just keep in mind that the chlorine in your tap water is not good for fish. Tip number 5, temperature. Keeping a good temperature for the fish that you have is so crucial for the health of those fish. Like, I know it seems super obvious, but sometimes we don't think about that, right? If you have a betta fish, you want to keep it tropical, so you put a heater in there. But if you have a goldfish, some people don't know this, but goldfish don't need heaters. They like colder water. If you have something like an oxalotl, that's a little different, but they love colder water, right? And they make water coolers, like little fans that blow air onto the water to cool it down. But just make sure you look into the fish that you're keeping, and if you have a community tank, make sure each species are compatible with the temperature that you're keeping your tank at, because you want your fish to be healthy. A good rule of thumb with temperature is if you keep it at the lower end of that temperature scale, their metabolism will slow down, so your fish will be a lot less active and they might even live longer. If you keep your temperature at the higher end of their tolerable scale, then your fish will tend to be more active and their metabolisms will be higher. Keeping the appropriate temperature for the fish that you have in your aquarium will prevent them from getting sick, prevent them from getting ick, prevent them from dying. They will just be so much happier, and you will notice that. So make sure you get a heater. Make sure you look into what temperatures that are required for your tank. For those who have made it this far into the video, I appreciate you. Here's the bonus tip. Get a timer for your light. Dude, the amount of times that I've forgotten to turn my lights on in the aquarium and it's been dark all day long in that thing, or when I go to bed and I forget to turn off the lights in the aquarium and a bunch of algae has grown because there was just too much light going on. Having a set, consistent schedule of when the tank light is on and off will dramatically help with the overall health of the tank. If you have your light on too long, there might be algae growing on your glass and you might not like that. Aesthetically, that might look really bad. If you have your lights off too long, your plants might die off, and you don't want that. You work really hard to keep your plants alive. If you get a plug-in wall timer to help automatically turn that light on and off, you won't even have to think about that. It's not even a habit you have to form anymore. You completely eliminate that mistake that's susceptible to happen when you forget to turn on and off your light. And if you have algae problems, it's usually light. If you have too much light, you usually have algae problems. So do yourself a favor, go get a timer. I hope you like this video, guys. Those are the tips that I could think of that are crucial to keeping an aquarium. It's not that hard. You just need to learn what that ecosystem needs, and then once it has that, it just keeps going and it does its own thing, and you get to enjoy that. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. I really appreciate you guys. We have this little tiny growing community, and I really appreciate what we've built here. If you have any more tips to share, go ahead and throw them into the comments, because I'm sure I missed a whole bunch. I know a lot of you guys are super experienced aquarium owners, and I know you can probably teach me a lot. So thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.